Hey everyone, it's Carissa Wiley at sprinkledwithglitter.com. Thanks for joining me today. Today I am sharing this beautiful, clean and simple floral themed card, but I'm going to show you 3 ways to shift ink colors as you're doing some ink blending on your stamped images. And I'm going to be featuring this brand new Lovely Bloom stamp set along with the coordinating stencil and die set. And I'm also going to use a little bit of this 6x6 pattern paper. This is the Sunshine On My Mind pattern paper pad. This is the 6x6 version. It's also available in 12x12, but I find that the 6x6 version is perfect for card making. Now I'm going to start by removing this one-piece stamp from the backer and mounting it into my MISTI stamping tool. I have a piece of white cardstock here. I happen to use the Concord & Ninth white cardstock. And I'm going to ink up my one-piece stamp using some Pinkfresh Studio Hybrid Black ink. This is a beautiful, rich black ink, but it does take a little bit longer to dry than a standard dye-based ink. And so once I stamp this a couple of times onto my cardstock, I'm going to remove the cardstock from my MISTI stamping tool, and I'm going to heat set this with my heat tool so that I'm not smudging my ink as I go over the top of it with my blending brushes and my ink. So if you wanted to skip the drying portion, you could instead stamp it in a dark gray ink and then go ahead and blend over the top and then go back later and stamp over the top using the hybrid ink. You'll notice that I left my stamp mounted in my MISTI stamping tool because I am going to go back and do a little bit of stamping over the top of this again, just to kind of liven up those black lines and make them really rich after I add my ink blending. So I started by ink blending stencil number 1 with key lime ink, and then my second stencil with some olive ink. And then I decided I really wanted that color to kind of shift in a different direction. So I replaced stencil number 1 and I'm going over the top of that with a little bit of Tidal Pond ink. And that's just going to shift that a little bit away from that true green color and bring a little bit more of the teal. Now the difference is subtle. I'm not completely changing the ink color, but I am adding a little bit different tone kind of blended in there to add just a shift of that color. And that is the first way to kind of shift your colors of ink, to add a different ink color over your base color. I'm going to do it again here. I started out with peach fuzz ink, and then I'm going in with a light layer of coral reef over the top of the peach fuzz, and it just kind of shifts it a little more pink and makes it a little less orange. Now I worked through all of my stencils, and here is the completed look. And I decided that there were some areas of the stencil that I wanted to add a little bit darker shading. Now I could have done this with a detailed blending brush like the 1/2-inch blending brush from Pinkfresh, or I can go back over the top of these with some markers. These are Copic markers, but a dye-based marker would work to add a little bit of shading as well. So I'm going in with a Copic marker and adding some darker areas into these. Now this gives me a little more control than if I were to use a blending brush. I can definitely control the marker where it goes a little bit more than I can with a blending brush. And it also allows me to kind of creep my way up. So I had a lighter R11 and that wasn't quite dark enough. So I came in with a little bit darker marker on some of these to add a little more intensity to that shading. And it's just shifting that color just enough to add a little bit more kind of depth and dimension to these images. Now, I am not completely changing the color of these flowers. I'm just adding some extra details and kind of shifting the colors a bit with this marker. And the key to this really is picking a marker that is close to your base color. You don't want to go in with something crazy. Now, the third way to kind of shift ink colors is using a white colored pencil. Now, I'm going into the areas that I kind of wanted to lighten up and add a little more highlight to, and adding just a little bit of white colored pencil over the top of those areas to bring back some of the highlight and make them a little bit lighter in those areas. And that is the third way to kind of shift ink colors as you're doing ink blending. Now I'm completely done with my coloring and I want to kind of intensify those black stamped lines on my images. So I went ahead and placed my cardstock back into the lower right hand corner of my Misty stamping tool. I inked up my stamp once again in that same black ink and stamped it onto my cardstock. And now I really have an intense black line. I'm going to use the coordinating die to die cut all of these images at once. I love the one-piece stamps and dies that Pinkfresh Studio does. They do them so well, and I love that I have multiple images to either use on one card or several cards depending on how I'm creating that day. Now, I did originally plan on only using one of these images and making a couple of cards. But in the end, I decided to kind of line these up and create a border with all three of these images. So now it's time to bring in the Sunshine on My Mind pattern paper. I had a couple of really strong contenders, but in the end, I decided on this simple blue and white pattern paper. It's a beautiful kind of free stripe. I had just a little bit of it left over from another card project. And I'm just adding this strip of pattern paper along the left edge of my top folding A2 size card. And now I'm just adding some vellum pieces behind these die cut and stenciled images. This is gonna just add a little bit of a soft shadow to these die cut images. You can see I've added it behind using a little bit of liquid glue, but I'm slightly offsetting it to kind of just create a really dreamy shadow for these images. I love to layer up vellum with my die cut images. I think it makes such a difference. Now on this large center piece that I'm going to be using, I did actually die cut a couple more plain white die cuts of this image and stacked them behind so that vellum is sandwiched between that top layer and two more layers of white cardstock behind it. This is going to give it a little bit of weight and a little bit of dimension on my card front. And then I've also stamped and die cut the Thankful for You Always sentiment. This is from the Garden Bouquet washi stamp set and coordinating die set that is brand new in the June 2023 release. I think it's a beautiful sentiment. And now that I have all of my layering done, I'm going to start adding these onto my card front right along the edge of that pattern paper. And I'm going to kind of create a border using these floral pieces. So I'm starting out at the top. I added that piece on with a single layer of foam adhesive. I've also added that bottom piece on with a layer of foam adhesive. And then I am adding this piece over the top. It also has foam adhesive behind it, but keep in mind, it has the double layer of cardstock, so it really does hold a lot of weight on this card. Now I'm going to nestle in my die cut sentiment here. It is going to overlap those floral pieces, and I have some foam adhesive on the right edge of this, on the back side of the right edge, to kind of make everything level. And then I just press that into place, and I'm finishing off my card by adding some iridescent droplets from Pinkfresh Studio. I'm just adding those on with some liquid glue, and I'm using my dual tip embellishment tool to help me place those onto my card. And that finishes off my card for today with these beautiful Lovely Bloom stamps, stencils, and coordinating die, as well as that beautiful Sunshine on My Mind pattern paper. And you can really see in these finished images the way that those ink shifting techniques really bring this image to life. Now, as always, I will have links to the featured products used in this project in the description at YouTube. So if you're looking for something in particular, be sure you check there. Thank you so much for joining me today. I'm so glad you're here. I hope you enjoyed this project. If you did, be sure to give this video a thumbs up and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications here on this YouTube channel so you don't miss any of the paper crafting and card making video tutorials shared here. And I'd love for you to leave a comment below and let me know which of these 3 techniques for shifting your ink blending is your favorite. Thanks again for watching, and until next time, I hope you have a fabulous day.